It's rivalry week this week, although they don't feel quite as rivalry-y as they used to. I'm Andrew Nemec. This is joined by Jason Suke. Suke, how you doing, man?
Doing good. And hey, the rivalry week, as we like to say, it's always a fun rivalry week.
Rivalry week. It's not easy to say.
Yeah. No, the Civil War takes a break next year, and then it's back. So at least, I mean, with the Apple Cup's going to continue, and it sounds like the Civil War minus the 1 year break is going to be back. So that's either good news or bad news, depending on how you view it. I know a lot of Oregon State fans weren't particularly fired up to continue it, but Scott Barnes, the AD at Oregon State, said that he listened, and so they're skipping one at Reeser, and it's coming back. And then I haven't heard a lot of the Washington State fans that are clamoring for this to go away, and why would it? They beat them last year, so, and we knew the Apple Cup was going to continue. So, whatever at least for me personally, I like that these games are going to continue, even if they're one-sided. For the most part, they've been one-sided forever. So I'm glad they're back, even though they've lost some of the juice. Some other things, I wish they'd get moved to the end of the year. USC, Notre Dame do this. I mean, you can play non-conference games at the back half, especially for Washington and Oregon, when increasingly I think these are not going to be uber competitive games. I would love it if we could see these move to the back half of the year. That's my one complaint, but I am happy that even with the one break next year, that both of these games seem like they're going to continue for a long time.
You mentioned Scott Barnes, so I guess that's a good place to start. He said this week that he believes he has the right guy in Trent Bray. The old vote of confidence that suddenly means you're on the hot seat. If your AD has to say that, you're on the hot seat. And then he said he listened to the fans who said they don't want the Civil War and they don't really want him. He's not getting rid of himself. He's not getting rid of the Civil War. He's not getting rid of Trent Bray. Trent Bray's not getting rid of special teams coordinator Jamie Christian. There's a whole lot of people listening, but not actually doing anything anybody is asking for.
Well, why even do the interview, right? Why speak? Because you can't be honest about it. Look, one of two things is happening here, maybe three. I'll give you three options. Either one, he doesn't have the money or the authority to do anything with Trent Bray, even though the buyout's not that high. It's like under $5 million at this point. But Oregon State,
3-ish, 3.2-ish, something like 3.6.
Is that what it is? Because I thought it was like 4.8. But either way,
okay, I'll look.
Either way, depending on when you do it, in the season, out of season, because I'm assuming I think it was 4.8 before the start of the season, but right, you're already paying him this year, so maybe it does go down to 3 because he's making like $2 million a year. So maybe it is, maybe it's 3. So maybe you just ultimately, decided as a top to bottom organization, we're not doing this, we can't afford to pay him out. Who do we go get? So that could be option one. Option two is it's just a lie, and you can't say that you are going to fire your coach or that he's on the hot seat. And you do the amount of times I've heard over the 20 years I've been doing this, oh, he's our guy. And then 3 weeks later, he's no longer our guy. Just because you say one thing, like I said, it's the dreaded vote of confidence, right? In fact, I almost always believe that when a coach is on the hot seat and the AD is like, oh, I have total confidence in him. That's like a death sentence. Or it could be that he really is out to lunch and Scott Barnes truly believes that everything is fine. We all polish turds, we all sprinkle bark dust in our yard to make it look good. And maybe he just is trying to sprinkle that bark dust and pitch the idea that everything's fine in Corvallis and no big deal and everything's fine and total confidence and attendance is great and sponsorship and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And maybe his head's just buried in the sand. So one of those three things, and which one it is, I don't know, spin the wheel and pick it, but things aren't good. And I don't believe Scott Barnes is a dumb man. I really don't. And so I think that the answer to that is either he doesn't have the resources, the authority to do it, or this is just putting a pin and plugging the hole in the dam with your finger. And 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, when this thing gets worse, because it doesn't show signs of getting better, then you go ahead and you do it and you say, well, circumstances have changed and, don't hold me to my word, which is something that every AD has the right to say. The price today isn't the price tomorrow, but this is not going to, I think, magically get better. Although, to be fair, if we're going to do glass half full, we both said at the start of the season, these first 4 weeks were by far the toughest part of the schedule. And then after that, there's not a team on your schedule that should overwhelm you. Now, whether you beat Houston, whether you beat App State, who knows, right? But there shouldn't be a team after Oregon here that you look at Oregon State and say, we're not going to be competitive. So, maybe this is Scott Barnes saying, look, you're going to take your ass kicking against Oregon. I understand that. Weather the storm. And then, Trent, go prove to me that you are the guy by beating Houston or not getting embarrassed and going on a run. There's no excuse for Oregon State to not end up being a 6 or a 7 win team when you look at the back half of the schedule. There's just not teams in there. I don't care what App State on the road. You have no business losing to App State. Washington State, you beat last year. Washington State had the most embarrassing half of football I've ever seen against North Texas. So maybe that's all this is you get through this week, take your medicine, and then move on and try to right the ship. And then if you can, after 2 or 3 weeks, go back and revisit this.
We talked about it before the year. You're right. We said these 4 games would be the toughest. We also said we can't really, if you're going to project wins later, we can't see quit because there's going to be some lean in to quitting when you play teams that can really snap your neck, like a Texas Tech and an Oregon.
Yeah. And
we saw it in week 3, and we saw it before the fourth quarter in week 3. Yeah. Lots of quit.
Yeah.
Lots of quit. Not pursuing the football, letting guys just run all over them. Yeah. That can't happen, and that's my concern. Yeah. You've got to weather the storm this week and stay together. And the biggest thing for me, and we'll get into the game and we'll get into the minutia of the game, but I want to see Oregon State's effort improve. Yeah. I don't really care if you have a long snapper. We now know it's not going to get worse. Yeah. Like it's not going to get worse than what they did last week or 2 weeks ago on special teams. They have the worst special teams grade in the country on PFF. Like it's not going to get worse. So it can kind of only get better with special teams because, again, it can't get worse. I just want to see effort. Yeah. And that's a silly thing to ask for in a college football program. And I really am torn and conflicted with this Oregon State team. Part of me wants to just say, this is an abomination. What Trent Bray is putting out from an execution standpoint, from a game plan standpoint, is an abomination, and he needs to go. And there's the other part of me that says this shouldn't be as hard as they're making it. It's kind of the same argument, but Oregon State fans, instead of just being like, we got left behind and Oregon's going to kill us and we don't want to play the Civil War anymore, there is no reason, none, that Oregon State can't become Fresno State or Boise State with the right coach. Yeah. There's no reason they can't. No. Be the non-Power 4 team that's well-positioned on the West Coast, that can recruit the guy that the Big Ten and ACC with Cal and Stanford don't get, and they run through Mountain West level competition. Yeah. There's no reason that can't be what happens. And Fresno State and Boise State in their good years can make the college football playoff. They can be a BCS back then, a BCS buster. They can be that. There's no reason for this. And I do think if I was going to have a criticism of Scott Barnes and the athletic department, it feels like they got left behind and went, what do we do? I don't know what to do. Yeah. And there's not a lot of vision. It's like, let's hold the fort together. Well, you're now multiple years past holding the fort together. Wazoo's already lost two potential first-round picks at quarterback. They've already lost their coach, and you don't hear the same discussions from Washington State. Like, we don't want to play the Apple Cup anymore because we're not even on the same level. You know, we just want a coach that's not going to leave us. Let's bring back Paul Wolf. Like, you don't hear those discussions. And I would love, if I could gift Oregon State something this fall, I would gift their athletic department some vision and say, look beyond there is no more Pac-12, because that's kind of all they ever say. Yeah. You know, and then you get these like platitudes that are nonsense. Like, we have full faith in Trent Bray. Well, we're really looking into whether or not to play the Civil War anymore. Oh, we re-upped it, even though the fans overwhelmingly said they didn't want it. You know, Barnes was on prime time and said, we won the portal. We won the transfer portal. Yeah. And I was in that day and was like, you can't say that to people. They're not stupid. People aren't stupid that follow it. If people care enough to listen to like this podcast and radio shows, if they're that in the weeds with their team, they know they didn't win the portal. Don't say that stuff. Yeah. So have some vision. Look, how do we become a Fresno State? What do we need to do from a recruiting standpoint? What do we need for a budget? Look to the future, because the answer's not going to come this week, and it's probably not going to come this season. An Oregon State fan, I know it's really hard right now. I know you're not real into your athletic department. I know you're not into Coach Bray. That being said, I go to some of those games the second half of the year because they're going to be competitive. Yeah. And whether or not you feel good about where your program is at, those athletes, to keep with this after the start, they deserve to be commended for that. If they battle and they come back and win 6-7 games and you see some cohesion and you see them as a team playing together, Oregon State fans should support this, because this first month has been absolutely brutal. Yeah. And it's not – go ahead.
No, I couldn't agree more. Dig in, right? Just as a university, as a fan base, dig in and start trying to work your way out of this. You're right. I was going to say the first month has been brutal, but not just the fight, but I need to see it from the coaching staff too. Get rid of the procedure penalties, right? Quit coming up with the sloppy play and actually look buttoned down. And that's honestly what I want to see, is just look from a procedure standpoint like you know what you're doing. Look buttoned up, because it doesn't take talent to be disciplined, and it doesn't take talent to not make stupid mistakes and look like you know what you're doing. And like, I'll even go back to it. I think too, the special teams thing, you're telling me in a month we can't find a GD snapper? Like, are you shitting me?
I know.
That blows my mind. As someone that played center in college, I was not a long snapper, but I would go down. Almost every center does go down with the long snappers, right? And it's something that I did. I did it one time in a game, right? I had to do it. Like, I think I maybe 2 or 3 snaps in my college career. Never did it in the NFL, because they actually have specialists that are there just for that. But in college, right, you usually have one long snapper that's there, maybe on scholarship for that. And then you've got a couple guys that go down there during special teams period. And as a center, I would just go down there. And was I great at it? No. But you gave me a month? Yes. I could snap the GD ball back to the punter at a normal depth. Like when I had to do it for extra point, I would just snap it as I would almost a normal shotgun snap. Instead of doing the 2-hand, I would just take the ball and cradle it, and I could do a shotgun snap and get it back there pretty good on an extra point. So, and like, was it great? No, but it was functional. Yeah. And my God, I could give me a month's time. Guess what I'd be doing every day for 4 hours? And so to me, that stuff just is inexcusable to me. And that goes back to, how can you not be buttoned up, right? Going back to we don't need to get into the details. We've been all over it, but for the love of God, the next couple weeks, if you're going to Scott Barnes, you're going to tell me that Trent Bray is the guy, and maybe he is, right? Maybe Trent Bray is the guy, and this is just weathering a storm. Then show it to me. Whether wins and losses is one thing, but show me that you're buttoned up. Show me that from an operational standpoint, you're not making dumb coaching decisions, like taking special teams penalties and giving the other team first downs. Show me that you can actually execute simple ideas like shotgun snaps.
Don't call a timeout before 3rd and 26 and then just give up a touchdown.
Thank you. Show effort in tackling. Show something at the end of the half when you at least get a chance at a field goal or a Hail Mary or something, when you're trying to find any sort of momentum and you just decide that you're going to walk into the half against Texas Tech without having any opportunity at points. That was an embarrassment. That to me are all.
That was quit. That's staff quit.
That's just quit. It's just like, whatever. We're getting our ass kicked and whatever. It's the end of the half. We took a sack. No big deal. No. Maybe you're not playing to win at that point because you're down and you know you're not coming back against Texas Tech, but that lays the foundation for later in the year.
Right.
Show me from an operational standpoint that you have a real team. Show me as an operation that you have this team pulling in the same direction and that you know what you're doing. That's all I care about, honestly, in this game, and maybe even in Houston going forward. Just show me that this looks like a tight, well-run team, because I can accept losses when you're playing against better competition. I get it, right? Like, no one's expecting you to beat the world when it's up against you, and no one's expecting you to all of a sudden be the greatest team in college football. But it's not that hard to expect you to look like a functional unit, right? And so That's what I'm looking for.
I mean, you look at it in game one, poor execution, bad special teams, and unprepared. And some of that, a true freshman quarterback throwing it around the yard in the first quarter, and then you adjust some things and figure it out. Yeah. I could see you not knowing that true freshman could sling. You don't have a lot of tape on him. I could see being caught off guard that he's that good. Game two, a complete disaster from top to bottom, all three phases, penalties, special teams. Game three was special teams embarrassment. How do you not have a long snapper? Yeah. Some procedural penalties, and then quit. Yeah, so we have not seen a game where there weren't multiple red flags. And that's where my counter to Barnes would be, is like, this is a disingenuous thing to even say this is the dude. Some of this stuff isn't just getting beat. It's like you guys aren't prepared. I interviewed Cash Larson. He is the #1 long snapper recruit in Oregon after that Fresno State game. He was at the game as a fan because his parents used to have season tickets. They got rid of their season tickets because they had Friday night games to go to for their son, and it was a long trip. So they still go to games, but they don't have season tickets anymore. So he was there as a fan. By the way, after that game, Oregon State's coaching staff started following him as a potential recruit. But I asked him about long snapping because I was curious, and I did not ask him, like, what's wrong with Oregon State? Like, we didn't get into that. That wasn't it. It was about long snapping. And how did you get into it? And I just think this is an interesting story. He said the Lake Ridge coach pulled together the like non-all-state, all-league guys on their team because they're loaded. Yeah. And said, let's have an honest conversation, especially like linebackers, O-line, D-line. If you guys want to play college ball, you're kind of right on the fringe of not getting to play, or NAIA maybe, you know. If you want to have a little extra something, long snap. Learn to long snap because teams need long snappers. So Cash did the honest assessment, was like, I'm probably a low-level college football player, you know, if that at the time, and now he's a little bit better, and maybe he will, but he became the state's best long snapper. And I asked him about that process. And he said within a very short period of time that he learned how to do it. He wasn't good yet, but it took very little time. And he went to a camp, having done it for just a little while, and was a 3.5 star, which means you're like a D2 snapper. Yeah. So within like literal weeks from never having done it before, he was like a legitimate recruit as a long snapper. So to your point that they should in a month figure that out, someone that's a D1 athlete should be able to, hey guys, we have a disaster. We can't punt or kick extra points. Someone within like a couple days should have been able to do it. It's not hard.
In the Civil War, I will tell you right now, the first time Oregon State has to punt, if they have to line their punter up 8 yards behind and basically quick kick and have 30-yard punts against the Oregon Ducks,
Jeremiah McClellan's going to block it.
Fire everybody. It has been a month. If you cannot find someone to execute a long snap after a month in the biggest game against the top 5 team in the country, then just to me, you're not a serious program. You're just not. You're not. To your point, you're not a serious program if you can't find a long snapper in a month. That's an embarrassment. Okay. So that's kind of my that's all I'm that's the bare level. I'm setting the bar so GD low that you can trip over the top of it. Execution, just look buttoned up. Not asking you to win, not asking you to keep it competitive. Look buttoned up.
It bothers me that we're talking about the same stuff that I talk about on the sideline sometimes when I go to games, or when I used to go to games a lot in high school, when I talked to the freshman coach. Yeah. And he'd say, well, we're running most of the offense. There's some things we can't run because our quarterback doesn't have the arm, or, you know, special teams always a disaster because, you know, it's the freshman specialists. Like it's a problem, but, you know, we made a couple extra points this week. The fact that that's where we're at with Oregon State, again, a team that I really do believe can be a Fresno State, Boise State, it means they've fallen really hard, and you can't just blame Oregon or Nike or the Big Ten. Some of this is self-inflicted at this point. Like not being able to long snap, Oregon didn't do that to you. College football didn't do that to you. You've got problems from inside the house. The calls are coming from inside the house on this one. Let's get into the Civil War. Enough with Oregon State. I mean, we'll talk about them, but from a football standpoint, Civil War, Oregon, the biggest spread in the history of the Civil War. I think did it open at 34? I saw as low as 24, and then somebody said that wasn't actually right.
I never saw 24. I saw just shy of 35. I saw everything from like,
that's what 34 and a half.
It's 34 and a half ish, and so it's right around there.
I think Oregon dodged a bullet with the potential DeCorian Moore scare. They're relatively.
Sounds like he's all right.
He sounds like he's good. They're relatively healthy. Noah Whittington, still. He missed last week, so we'll kind of see on his status. But this Oregon team is rolling, and we finally saw them look human against Northwestern. But the thing that Northwestern was able to do was, be successful pushing the defensive line around. I mean, they were pretty physical in the trenches, and that at least slowed Oregon down because Northwestern stacked long possessions together, multiple long drives. It didn't always end in points. In fact, it didn't end in points at all until the fourth quarter. But just because they were able to limit possessions, they made the game closer. You look at this Oregon State team and the difference between a Northwestern and Oregon State right now. Northwestern doesn't have the skill guys at all. Their quarterback couldn't throw an out without looping it in there, Preston Stone. Oregon State's got the quarterback. Their skill position guys are far below Oregon's, and the trenches are their biggest problem. They had negative rushing yards into the fourth quarter against Texas Tech. You look at the difference between Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks and past iterations of Oregon Ducks, it's that they're beefed up in the trenches. The spread's the biggest it's ever been. I think the talent gap in the trenches is the biggest I've ever seen for an Oregon State matchup.
Yeah, I saw it here, by the way. It opened at 28.5, and now it's been bet up to 35.5. So it goes to show you what people think. When you get these spreads at 35, it's like the Northwestern, game. You can get a backdoor cover. You're right. I mean, the gap is enormous. And unfortunately for Oregon State, you're right. In the way that you keep this close is I think Oregon had 4 possessions. Like, we look at that Northwestern game and people are like 17 points. Oregon scored on 3 of the 4 possessions. They had 1 punt.
Right.
And then it was, I think, field goal, touchdown. So, all of a sudden you get to 17. But yeah, I mean, this was Stanford's MO. Anytime you're playing a superior team, you just want to limit possessions. I mean, that's tale as old as time. If I give you the ball 15 times and I stop you, 4 times, I look up at the scoreboard, dude, you still got 60 points. But if I limit you to 8 possessions and I stop you 2 or 3 times, now I'm in the game, right? So, I mean, that's the whole MO. And Oregon State ideally would like to be able to come out and kind of grind some clock, but it's just not what they do. In fact, Oregon State's biggest strength right now is throwing the football, and there's some things to like. Like, Malik Murphy is a good quarterback, and Walker, and they've got some guys. I just don't know if they hold up. If you have no respect for a team's run game, and you're going to get up and you're going to play press man, and then you're going to do, I don't even know if Oregon's going to have to send the house, but even if you can get home rushing forward, but God forbid they start overloading some sides. And we know Malik Murphy is prone to mistakes when pressured. Styles make fights, right? And unfortunately, where Oregon State is strong is not going to be something that I think is negatively going to affect Oregon.
It's not conducive to the score not getting out of control.
No, it feels like Oregon State, if they're going to win games this year, are going to have to win games, 42 to 38. And I don't think you want to get into a track meet with Oregon. So it's just tough. This is why I said ultimately, we don't need to get deep into the X's and O's in this. It's going to be a lot to a little, and you just want to see some execution. Show some signs of life. Look at Northwestern. Northwestern did a nice job at moving Oregon off the line of scrimmage. And I know Northwestern is different up front than Oregon State is, but you can get some yards on this Oregon defense. You can move some guys. So I would like to see Oregon State not just abandon the run right away. Try to find some stuff there. Try to find something in the run game that Northwestern took from it. Try to stay in front of the sticks. But if this thing ends up being 3rd and 6+ every single time, dude, Oregon's gonna just it's gonna get ugly, and it's gonna get ugly in a hurry. And then, like what you said, don't quit. Just keep fighting and show some heart and show operationally that you can have some stuff buttoned down. But I wish I could tell you from an X's and O standpoint on either side of the ball. I wish I could tell you where Oregon State is going to be able to attack. I really do. And I'm not trying to be mean. I just don't know. I don't know if I'm Trent Bray and I'm sitting in there and I don't know if I'm in charge of the offense and I'm sitting there. I don't know where I'm looking to attack. I'm not certain where I would say that the weak spot is, other than, again, try to play a low scoring, grinded out game a la Northwestern and stay and not make the mistakes that Northwestern did. I'm just not sure physically if Oregon's State is capable of that, but it still may be your best bet. Maybe use your quick passing game as your run game, right? Maybe use some of the jet fly motion stuff. Maybe try to get the ball out on the edge via that way. Quick hit stuff, one step, get rid of the ball, try to get some guys into some space and essentially use that passing attack as your run game to get those guys out in space. Cause I'm not sure the way Oregon State has run the ball this year, that if you're going to be able to take advantage of right now, maybe Oregon's only weakness, which maybe the run defense is something that looks a little iffy. But if you don't have a buttoned up offensive line, that big D line and some of their gap slants and movement is going to be really, really problematic. And when you look at Oregon State, who has done a good job of that this year, of keeping D linemen in front of you, that could be a real problem with the way Oregon, again, styles make fights. And this kind of aggressive beating gaps and penetration that we've seen, some of the Oregon defensive linemen doing, that could spell real problems for an offensive line right now that's having a hard time keeping people in front of them.
There's a few things I'm looking at though. If I'm the Oregon defense, this is probably Trent Walker's probably the best receiver you faced. He's definitely the most productive receiver you faced. Yeah. This is a young secondary on the outside, and they're very talented. And we've talked about that. I mean, we both said Brandon Finney Jr. is going to end up being probably a first-round pick. Dylan Thieneman, first-round pick. Yeah. If you're Oregon, you cannot give up a lot of rushing yards to Oregon State. If you do, there's an issue. Like, let's be clear. If Hankerson has 50, 60 yards rushing on 11 carries, and he's like consistently getting 3 or 4, and I don't think that's going to happen. But if he does, you've got a big issue because Oregon State can't run on anybody. And I mean, they're averaging like under a yard a carry in the first half with their running back. Like they can't run, period. So you can't give that up. The other thing, if I'm Dan Lanning, I say, this is our first real test for our secondary. This is the best team that can throw. Northwestern couldn't throw to save their lives last week. Not a chance. This team has a quarterback that can spin it. So let's see how this secondary looks against an opponent that can actually throw a little bit. Now, he's going to be under pressure. I would guess Malik Murphy throws 2 picks in this game. I would be really surprised if Dylan Thieneman didn't get a pick. The reason he hasn't gotten picks this year is he's been helping out a little bit in the run, and they've really limited teams. This is a team that wants to the only thing they can really do is try to hit a big shot. Yeah. They're not good enough. They're not quick enough to get to the edges. They can't run the ball up the middle more than likely. They're going to throw. So I would guess Dylan Thieneman gets his Oregon pick this week, that he gets his first one. If you're Oregon, limit Trent Walker. If Trent Walker has a day where he has 120 yards or something, and even if you beat him 56-7, but Trent Walker has 7 catches for 150 yards, I'm worried about that because you're going to face guys that are Jeremiah Smith is a lot better than Trent Walker. And going into this one, they are over-reliant on Trent Walker. So shut him down. If you're good enough, do it. So those are a couple things I'm looking at. If I'm Oregon State, I want to keep Malik Murphy upright as much as possible. These edges, Tuioti and Uiagalelei have to just be licking their chops. Like, you remember Kayvon Thibodeau, they played teams and they'd play really bad teams, and that's when Kayvon would just eat. And he'd get his 3 sacks. And then he'd end the year with 9.5, 10 sacks, and 7 of them would be against lesser competition. If I'm Tuioti and Uiagalelei, there's a race to the quarterback every third down. There's a race to the court because Oregon State's O-line has been abysmal. I would be shocked if Tuioti and Uiagalelei don't each have a sack or 2. Or, this could be the 3-sack game for Uiagalelei. So Oregon State's got to figure out a way, to your point, of getting rid of the ball quickly, because if they throw it downfield, Thieneman's going to cause them problems, and they're not going to be able to get the pass off. That's kind of what I'm looking at, is a lot of underneath. I would be shocked, as long as Murphy's in the game, if he doesn't throw the ball 45 times. Yeah. And I know that sounds nuts. You kind of want that. I'm okay with 1st and 10 throwing a wide receiver screen or a pop pass or whatever, because you're not going to run it up the middle. And if you are, you're going to be in 2nd and 11, 3rd and long, and you're going to give up sacks. And then you have to deal with your special teams, which can't get a snap off. So it's really tough. On the offensive side of things, I want Oregon to establish or to continue to establish a pecking order with their running backs. You can't have a situation later in the year where 7 different guys make the trip. You've got to have, and that's hard. So some of those conversations are tough, but we're a month into the year. You kind of know who's been effective and who hasn't. It's time to start to trim the fat with that group. Everybody can't have 5 carries. It's not youth football, So I would like to see, and right now their leading rushers, De'Aaron Hill, averaging 14.2 yards a carry. I'd like to see him get more between the tackles work. Okay, he can run to the outside. Let's see what he does with 12 carries against Oregon State. Let's see if he can hold up in that way, because you can't just specialize. Okay, it's, yes, you can have a goal line back, and Davison's that guy. You can't have 7 different backs for 7 different situations. You need to have a rotation of 3 or 4 guys. Who are those 3 or 4 guys? And then beyond that, they're going to continue to mix it up. I'd still love for Kenyon Sadiq. We're going on 12 games now where Kenyon Sadiq hasn't had more than 2 catches. I know you don't need him to have more than 2 catches against Oregon State, but it would be nice to see him be an alpha receiver in a game. I think he's fully capable, but we haven't seen that. And when you're checking boxes on a prospect, if you're an elite tight end, they don't need to save you. Like Tyler Warren wasn't saved from when they played Northwestern. Like, we'll give him 1 or 2 catches. We'll save his 8-catch game for Penn State. No, if you're an alpha receiver, be an alpha receiver. I'd love to see a Kenyon Sadiq game where you don't have to give him 12 catches, but get him 5 or 6 catches for 80 yards, for God's sake. If he's a first-round pick, get him the rock. That's what I'm looking for from Oregon on offense.
No, I agree. It is interesting that for all the talk, the production really hasn't been there with Sadiq. And, is that coming, or is it going to be one of those where he's going to get drafted simply based on physical stature and what we think he can do? But yeah, he has not really ever. He has not had that, 10 catches, 2 touchdowns. He has highlight moments, hurdles a guy, or,
his highlights are incredible.
Highlights are incredible, but you're right. We haven't seen the FU takeover game, a la Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland or even Arroyo down at Miami last year. So I don't know if that's a product of the offense and just spreading it around or what, but maybe one of those is coming.
They haven't had to yet. But again, they haven't had to do that with the receivers. And DeCorian Moore's had games where he's, had multiple catches and made multiple plays. And it feels like they're always saving Kenyon Sadiq for his one play, for his one big play. Oh, there it was. It's like, no, just if he's that much better than everybody else, feed him. Let's see what he can do.
No.
Or any prediction on score? I mean,
I don't know. It's whatever, 56-10. I just
something like that.
It'll be whatever Oregon wants it to be. And I do think that, unfortunately for Oregon State, I think the way it ended with Northwestern is not going to be good for you, because I think Lanning's going to emphasize trying to finish. Also, wouldn't surprise me even if this does get out of hand. And who knows? Maybe it shocks everyone, and this is a competitive game. Don't think it will be, but it's rivalry games. Weird things happen. I mean, God, the Cougars beat the Huskies in the Apple Cup last year. So, I mean, weird stuff happens in rivalry games, but it's at Autzen. And, it wouldn't shock me that as many guys that have played, and we haven't seen guys really play deep into the fourth quarter yet. You don't want, with Penn State, you don't want your first time that your main guys are playing 4 quarters and 70 snaps. I don't think you want that to be in the deep end of the pool in Happy Valley. So it wouldn't shock me if we do see, even if this game is out of hand in the third quarter, it wouldn't shock me to see a lot of these guys play deep into the fourth quarter, because there is a difference between football shape and being in shape. And the only way you get in shape is to play deep into these fourth quarters. So that's another one that I'm not certain that bodes well for Oregon or a point spread or anything like that. I think we're now with Penn State next week, and then Indiana, you're in the go time. We're getting ready to play the varsity, and this may be the tune-up where guys play a lot of snaps. So score a lot to a little. I just don't see many ways. What I've seen in the first 3 weeks, I just don't see many ways where this ends up being a competitive game. Hope I'm wrong. I hope the Beavs shock the world and this ends up being a Donnybrook. I can't see it.
I think the biggest upset in the history of this podcast is you predicting Oregon State with 10. That means they made an extra point and a field goal. And we just talked about they can't long snap. You might want to adjust that score.
Yeah, I might want to do like I don't know, like
56-12. 2 touchdowns with 2 missed extra points.
They have not kicked an extra point yet this year, have they?
I think they made one last week.
Did they make one last week?
Yeah, I think they might have made 2.
Okay. So before that, I know in the first 2 games they had not put foot to ball through the upright on an extra point. So, maybe there's some signs of life there.
I'm checking real quick because I'm on it already, so it's not going to take very long. 0 for 1 from field goal, but 2 of 2.
Okay.
On extra points.
There you go. Well, then all of a sudden,
so you watch your mouth about their special teams.
56-10. 56-10.
God,
yeah, and I still can't believe that they were short snapping all their punts, and then their best punt was the Malik Murphy
by
kick.
Far.
It was by far. Like you can't punt the GD ball to the other team at 25 yards every time. You just can't. If that's what it is, just go for it on 4th down. 25 yards.
You're so upset about it.
I am. That bothers me.
We talk away from the podcast, believe it or not, shocker of the century. And we have said, like, hey, we're kind of tough on Oregon State. We can be honest, but like I need to scale back sometimes because I'm just like, this is unacceptable. So the fact that we're on the 3rd iteration of figure out your GD long snapping,
it bothers me.
We've lost the script a little bit.
It does. As a fan, as an analyst, as a host, as a former player that played the game my whole life, it bothers me. There's just some things that aren't that hard to do. Like we used to have a coach all the time that would we'd come off the field and I remember this. My offensive line coach, he used to do this where he would be like, what's going on out there, and someone would say, well, it's hard. Like let's say as an O-line, I have to reach a guy on a 3 technique. And if you don't know what that is, it's a long way to go, right? As a center, I got to reach a guy on a 3 technique and take him over on an outside run.
You're on the move. Yeah,
you're on the move, right? I got to get my fat ass going. And I remember coming off the field and him being like, dude, what's going on? I'm like, dude, that's a tough block for me. And he looked at me, and this was early on, and he looked at me and said, I understand it's hard. Now effing do it, or I'll find someone that will. It was just one of those things in our offense. That is what was expected.
Right.
And it was, look, I understand. Like this is a tough thing, and we're going to ask you to do it a couple times a game. And if you can't, I will find someone that will. And if you want to play, do it. And those are at least tough things. This isn't tough.
Right.
These are basic fundamental things. And when you can't do basic fundamental things, that drives me crazy. I don't mind getting beat by better people. Going back, I remember playing Dwight Freeney in college. My roommate got benched. My roommate was our left tackle, and Dwight Freeney was really, 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 really good. And nothing was changing that. And like he can hang his like, what do you want him to do? Like that wasn't going to nothing was going to change that. And I can live with that. I can live with getting beaten by a better guy. I can live with getting beaten by a better team. What I can't abide is when you can't do basic fundamental things that aren't hard. And that drives me crazy. And yes, in case you couldn't tell, that special team shit drives me crazy. Well, because that those are not hard skills. And so to be anyway, like again, you're good. You're good. We don't need to like rehash it. It just you can tell like that those things bug me, and they're signs of rot in a program. And so I feel bad because I feel like we're piling on, and I don't want to pile on. I want Oregon State to be good. I want to root for Oregon State, but unfortunately, this is the most we've talked about them, and simply because it's so poor right now, and that sucks.
Yeah,
that sucks. I don't want to do that.
I think in general, one of the things I've learned as a non-player from former players and from talking to athletes is, and this long snapping thing is part of a bigger discussion. There are things that seem small from the stands that internally mean much, 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 much more.
Yeah.
Sometimes quarterback rotations will tell you a lot about what a coach really thinks of his players. And sometimes in 3rd and 9 against a good team, you're at midfield, you kind of need to try, and they run a draw. That does something on a sideline with your team that is different than maybe the fan sometimes realize. And some of those are a little bit more obvious, but there are little things that fans say, that people who played will be like, dude, if I'm on that sideline or in that locker room, there's no way that coach can save face now from X. And you think, well, that's a pretty little thing. And it's like, no. It means we can't function at an adult level.
Go look. I'll take two examples. We'll take the NFL last week. The Atlanta Falcons played the most conservative game plan I've ever seen in my entire life. And they got up like 9-0 and then basically just said, we're not going to do anything on offense. You know why? Because they thought the other side of the ball with J.J. McCarthy, they told you that one quarter against Chicago, that they didn't believe in any way that was real. They told you with the way they played offense, that they thought the Minnesota offense was a joke. And it was. Yes. And then I'll take the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, the worst team right now in the NFL. They had a play down the sidelines going in to try to tie or win a game. And Achane ended up stepping out of bounds on what ended up being a long touchdown run. So it got reviewed. And they all knew that thing was coming back, right? We could clear as day saw that he stepped out of bounds, and they were going to have it like on the 20-something yard line. The Miami Dolphins had that entire replay time and the 40-second play clock, right? And yes. What did they end up getting? They ended up getting 2 penalties in a row coming out of that because they couldn't get a snap off from a procedural standpoint. They couldn't get lined up and figure out what they were doing and snap the ball on time 2 times in a row, coming out of a multiple minute delay and your normal play clock. Mm-hmm. And that went from 1st and 10 on the 26.
Well, it went from having a touchdown and having the lead, just the dejection of that as a team.
To a team, and then it went from 1st and 10, 1st and 15, 1st and 20, ball game over. If you want to know how bad a team is, that's what I'm talking about with operational, like competency, right? You knew immediately, okay, this is coming back. We have to get buttoned up. We still have a chance to go in and win this game. It's 1st and 10 at the 26. And we're so ill prepared that we took 3+ minutes and we couldn't get lined up. Then we took a full 40 seconds and couldn't get lined up. Oh, penalty. Cool. Now we get through all that time where we have the penalty, back to our normal play clock. Oh, we can't do it again. And 2 penalties in a row. And by the way, on that next snap, the one where it was 1st and 20, they snapped the ball with like 1 second left on the clock. Barely got it off. That's the sort of shit I'm talking about. Yeah. Go back to like the Denver Broncos. Remember when they had Hackett was their coach? They couldn't get plays in.
Yes. Yep.
Like they were calling all their timeouts in the first quarter because Russell Wilson couldn't get plays communicated. That's an indicator that you're a crappy organization, right? That you don't know what you're doing. Right. That's the stuff I'm talking about. That from a procedural standpoint, or like you said, what coaches will tell you by the way they're doing things, they'll let you know little things turn into big things. Mm-hmm. Oh, why are we being so conservative? Because we don't think the other team is worth a damn and we don't need to be aggressive. Why are we running draws? Because we can't throw the ball and we believe that there's going to be a turnover. So those little things, what they do, they speak volumes.
Right.
And so that's
why one of the things we talked about Montana State from our Oregon takeaway. So to just show that we're being consistent and we're not dogpiling Oregon State. One of the things I said is there were moments where Oregon in the second half didn't look great, but they're button up. They rotate in second and third string guys, and there's not a lot of procedural penalties. They all know what to do. You're not seeing missed blocking assignments because guys don't know the play or don't know what's happening. And we talked about that is a staple of Dan Lanning teams with Oregon, that even in the old days when they were good under Cristobal, you'd see late in games they'd rack up penalties because the backups and third string guys weren't that prepared. They didn't totally know what they were doing. When you're really button up, execution from top to bottom of your roster speaks volumes. And if you're having procedural penalties after a week of hearing you guys should lose your jobs, you should be fired, you need to bench guys, and 2 of your first 3 plays against Texas Tech are false starts, that speaks volumes about your procedure, about what's going on in the locker room. That's why we're harping on it. It's as bad internally as you could imagine. It's really, really bad. Yeah. Okay. Apple Cup. Not from bad to worse. This should be a better game, I think. No. But Who knows? We thought, we talked about 2 weeks ago, hey, Washington State's 2-0. That Idaho game wasn't great, but they survived it. They've looked a lot better in their second game. Maybe we could have battle of undefeateds in the Apple Cup and Washington would still be favored. And then I checked the score at halftime because I saw someone tweet like, oh my God, Wazoo. And I checked and I was like, are they winning? Because it was just, oh my God, it's ambiguous, oh my God. And I think it was 52-3 at halftime against North Texas, the Mean Green. And I just went, oh my God, the Pac-2 this week is just getting drubbed.
Dude, it was so bad. So I found myself flipping over to it just because on Saturdays, I just have my list of games. Like I have a big scroll, right? And I can set it up where I just one touch button on my streaming box and it just scrolls to the game. So I had Texas up, Washington State was up, Oregon, all my games, right? And I'm just kind of flipping through. And I was like, oh, Washington State. Yeah. So, and I'm here to tell you, and this is a bold statement because again, I've been doing this a long time. I believe that's the worst half of football I've ever watched in my entire life. And that, I mean, outside of they had a nice drive with their second drive where they went like 70 yards and kicked a field goal. I want you to realize that, by the way, North Texas scored a touchdown on every drive in the first half.
Was it 49-3 or 52-3?
42-3.
42-3 at half. Okay.
42-3 at the half. This is Washington State. Interception, field goal, interception, fumble, punt, interception, fumble, end of half.
Dear God.
And then came out with punt, touchdown at the end when it was 59-3.
Dude, at least they cleaned up the turnovers.
They ran through they ran through three quarterbacks. Didn't matter. I just and North Texas looked like freaking Alabama, and not like this year's Alabama, like national championship Alabama. So I don't know what to necessarily make of Washington State. I do know they can't run the ball like at all. And also makes me wonder, how bad is San Diego State? Because I saw a little bit of the San Diego State game and was kind of like you said, I was like, okay, well, maybe Washington State's got a little something going here. The same circumstances as Oregon State, right? They go out and get the Jimmy Rogers from South Dakota. And, they found a way, right? Wasn't pretty against Idaho, but the defense played well. And then you get a nice win over San Diego State. And I know they were underdogs at North Texas, which, by the way, maybe that should have said something. I was like, you're underdogs at North Texas. But to come, I mean, that is just, boy. And so now my whole world's been kind of thrown upside down. I was hoping that this was going to be a bit of a competitive game. And now I'm kind of terrified because when I say, and I've seen some bad, I was at the Apple Cup when it was 0-11 Washington versus 0-11 Washington State. Washington State ended up winning that game. It was at Husky Stadium. I went to that. Washington State ended up winning that game.
Why on earth did you go to that?
My buddy was a Husky fan, and he was like, dude, let's just go up. So I was like, okay, or Washington State might have been 1-9.
I know you as a sports fan, so I know what it takes to get you out to a game.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's not even like, hey, like if I just said I have Blazer tickets, you want to go?
Yeah.
You might ask like, is it in the first couple rows?
Yeah.
No. 200 level. No. So the fact that you went to 0-11, again, I'm learning there's some upsets. You're predicting this Oregon State field goal. You went to an 0-11 game. I'm learning about you.
My buddy is like a diehard Husky fan, right? He always gets mad at us that we don't talk enough Huskies.
Well,
and he went there, his wife went there, his kid went there, and like I needed to be there for moral support. Like he goes, I need you to just come up and look. Yeah, just
come hold me.
Yeah, I got us like sideline passes, and he's like, just let's like I go up there for moral support, and he like wanted me to know like what do you think of this team? Like just look at it. And I do remember watching that and thinking these are the two worst, like I've never seen physically worse rosters like for the Pac-12. It was that bad. That was like the Paul Wolf days and Keith Gilbert. Like neither. I mean, it was so bad. So I'm like I've seen some bad ball. I've never seen a worse half of football than what Washington State put on film against North Texas. And where Dan Lanning might call off the dogs, I don't think Lanning necessarily has like a ton of animosity towards Oregon State. I don't think he's looking to bury Trent Bray. Jed Fish comes from the school of Steve Spurrier. And I'm not sure you're familiar with the way Steve Spurrier operated. Steve Spurrier didn't give an F about your feelings. Steve Spurrier often said, it's not my job to stop me. That's your job.
Right.
And Steve would run up the score. And Jed Fish, and I know Jed Fish has taken a lot of heat. They lost to Washington State last year, and it did not go over well. And they also ran one of the worst plays.
Pissed.
Yeah. Well, and they ran one of the worst plays. And by the way, they dominated them statistically, but they made too many mistakes. And then they had a chance to win the game, and they ran a short side quarterback sweep. I still, to this day, I can't figure out what the hell that play was.
It was the worst play call I saw all of that year.
Just staggering.
Game on the line, and as soon as he started running, I was like, "Oh no!" Like it had no chance,
no chance. And Fish has taken a lot of shit for this, and I'm telling you, it bothers him. I know for a fact that he has told this is not something that he is thrilled about. And Washington's got a little something cooking, and they got Ohio State coming into town next week, and they're not ranked, right? Washington is not ranked, and that bothers Washington. Something tells me that Jed Fish is about to put a Steve Spurrier on the Cougs, and he wants to make an announcement to the rest of the country. He wants to make an announcement to the people of Pullman. He wants to make an announcement to the people of Seattle that this is not last year, that this is a different team. He kept Jonah Coleman in the game 2 weeks ago. They had a bye and scored 5 touchdowns. He was running up the score then. Jonah Coleman, if he can score 9 touchdowns against Washington State, dude, he's going to score 9 touchdowns. They will not call the dogs off. So believe it or not, if you ask me which one of these games is going to get worse, they beat UC Davis 70-10. And I don't know. I wouldn't have said before last week that this could be this bad a game. I just thought Washington State was a little better than this. And so I don't want to let one game kind of cloud my opinion, but it is by far the most extensive look I had at Washington State, and it kind of terrifies me. I'm telling you, if Jed Fish can make this 70-10, he will make this 70-10. If he can make it 80-10, he is going to make this 80-10. And Washington is good, and I think Washington's getting better. I said before the start of the year, I thought Washington was a sleeper playoff team. I thought they could be in this thing to be a 10-win team, maybe 10-2. And at least be in that conversation. I saw Joe Klatt started talking about that. There is some real buzz around Washington. Their D-line, I don't know, but you look at Pro Football Focus, they have 2 of the top 5 rated offensive tackles right now through 3 weeks of any team on the West Coast. Their offensive line is getting it figured out. They have arguably the best running back on the West Coast, one of the top probably 3 running backs in the country. They have an NFL receiver. They have a very dynamic quarterback. I like what they're doing, and I just think that this is going to be, again, if you ask me which one's going to get more out of hand, I think this one has the chance to get more out of hand because Fish won't take his foot off the gas. Maybe Washington State can muster something up, but my God, I can't get that. I can't get the North Texas game out of my head. I just can't. If you have the ability to go back and watch it, unless you like horror movies, don't. Because that thing you'll watch that thing like kind of doing one of these numbers like through a crack in it's that bad. Never seen a worse half of football.
One, I think Idaho is better than people think. I think they're doing a nice job with that program. They should have lost to Idaho. Idaho led in that game late.
I should say had a chance.
Had a chance to take the lead,
I believe.
And they kicked a field goal to tie. Washington State ended up going down and kicking a field goal to win. Idaho had the ball like 1st and goal with under a minute left, down 3, and just couldn't punch it in. They should have lost to Idaho. This is not a very good Washington State team. Idaho likes to run the ball. North Texas got ahead by so much, they didn't have to throw. So some of the stats are a little misleading, but so far, Washington State has been pretty good against the pass. They haven't given up a ton of yardage. They're in the top 50 nationally, and they're absolutely horrible against the run. Now, Idaho likes to run the heck out of the ball, and it's 2 games in North Texas again, or 3 games. North Texas got so far ahead, they mostly ran the ball. But it wouldn't shock me at all if we leave this week and the conversation is Jonah Coleman, dark horse Heisman candidate. He's got 7 touchdowns in 2 games. Jonah Coleman, to me, is one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the country. And last year, he ran effectively behind a terrible O-line. They want to reward him for that. The fact that he stayed, Jed Fish, the fact that Jed Fish has a Jonah Coleman, he's going to let him score. And he's going to let him score a lot. And again, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Jonah Coleman does have that 4-touchdown game, a 5-touchdown game. I don't think he's going to score 9, but I wouldn't shock me. Seriously, I mean, Washington wants to stomp Washington State. And this Washington State team, and I did watch a good chunk of that Idaho game. And even in a win, it was like, oh, this is problematic. And then the North Texas beating, this Washington State team is not good. And we talked about it in the preseason. If the trenches are good, Washington is a legit top 25 team because no one doubts the skill guys. Well, the O-line is really good. In PFF grade, they're top 15 in the country. Yeah. I still have questions about their front seven. There's still work to be done there. There are teams that are going to run on them. Like when Oregon plays Washington, I think Oregon has a decided advantage running the football, and I think they'll be able to win that game because they'll out-physical them. That's a big mismatch. In this week, Washington State doesn't have the horses. They just don't, to deal with the fact that Washington's front seven is a little bit suspect. Jonah Coleman, 200 yards, 4 touchdowns is very much in play, and we could see a Denzel Boston breakout. He's been good. He's had some highlights. Last week, 2 weeks ago, he's pretty quiet. I think he had like 50 yards on 4 catches. Wouldn't shock me at all if they feed him. The stars are going to come out to play for Washington. They're going to win this game big. It's going to set up a ranked matchup between Ohio State and Washington. We talked about it with Oregon. There's a couple things we'd like to see. Trent Walker's the best receiver they've faced. We'd like to see them slow him down, if not shut him down. Prove you can do that. And then don't give up any rushing yards to an Oregon State team that can't run the football. For Washington, is there anything you want to see from this team that you'll go, okay, box checked, I feel better. They're going to beat Ohio State. I feel better about the Ohio State matchup because I saw X in the Apple Cup.
Pass rush. You get after him a little bit. One, I mean, it goes without saying, Washington State can't run the ball on you. I mean, my God, Washington State doesn't run the ball. I mean, I said, I think against Idaho, they ran the ball I think for 3 yards. It got a little better against San Diego State. And that San Diego State game is just an anomaly. And maybe San Diego State's just, that sort of dreadful. But they ran the ball for 3 yards against Idaho and 64 yards against North Texas for 2 yards a carry. So that just goes without saying, you cannot let Washington State run the ball on you. But I want to see a pass rush, right? If Washington State's going to throw the ball 35, 45 times a game against you, get after a little bit. And North Texas, I think, had 9 tackles for loss. They had 3 sacks. They had 8 or 9 quarterback hits. They got after a little bit. And so that's what I want to see. Because when you're playing Julian Sayin next week, this is for Washington. This isn't about Washington State. This is about the number 1 team in the country coming in. And Julian Sayin right now actually leads the country in true completion percentage. That's going to be a different animal. So in order to play with the Ohio States, you're going to need a pass rush, right? And last 2 years, there just really hasn't been last year with Fish, the pass rush is just, that is your issue. And so now we're going into year 2 of Fish. And so far it still hasn't been great. It's only been 2 weeks, but I need to see more. And they kept telling us that more depth was coming and guys were going to get healthier. And, and so now I think it's go time here. I don't think you can wait for that thing to pop against Ohio State. So that's what I want to see is I have no doubt that the Washington offense is going to smoke Washington State. They're going to go hot knife through butter, but I need to see the defense. I don't want this to be, 59 to 30. No, stomp them out, make them one-dimensional. And if you get out to a lead, that means Washington State has to throw. They can't be balanced. They can't run the ball. You know where their quarterback's going to be, whoever that's going to be. I'm assuming it's still going to be Potter. And so pin your ears back and go prove that you have a big boy pass rush that can affect a game. That's what I want to see out of Washington. Number 1 takeaway in this Apple Cup. And then have that killer instinct. Put teams away. You lost games last year that you had no business losing. Washington State, Rutgers, games that you physically and statistically dominated, and yet you let teams hang around. I think you did that against Colorado State this year, right? Now, UC Davis, whatever, he was 70 to whatever, but that first game against Colorado State, it was like that. You were better than them, and yet we went into the second half, and it was still a close game. Put teams away. Finish. Don't play with your food. Be dominant, and show us that you are a legitimate top 25 team and that you demand your respect when Ohio State comes into your house next week, which I'm just geeked about next week. We got Oregon at Penn State, Ohio State at UW. Let's go. Sign me up.
One game I want to get to on the national slate.
Yeah.
I mean, Miami, Florida, fine. Nebraska, Michigan, I'm interested. Nebraska's not back if they win that game, but I'm intrigued. They'd be 4-0. Yeah. The game that I'm excited about is Texas Tech and Utah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Texas Tech at Utah is going to be an absolute incredible. And the winner of that game is going to be in a really good position to make the college football playoff. If you haven't paid attention to Utah, they have two of the best O-linemen in the entire country, Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. Those two guys, potentially both first-round picks, will be tasked with slowing down Texas Tech's pass rush, which is highlighted by another potential high draft pick, David Bailey, who transferred from Stanford. Somebody in that matchup is going to use that highlight tape and make a couple $1 million. Yeah. I mentioned this last year before the Penn State Big Ten title game and said Connerly has an opportunity here to make himself a few $1 million. And that game ended up being the catalyst for what led to him being a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Similar thing in this one. If they just stuff David Bailey in a locker, we're going to start talking about Utah, one, being a college football playoff, team that's going to make it, or at least a dangerous threat to make it. And it's going to start the narrative of, does Utah have the best O-line in the country? Because they might anyway. Yeah. But if you shut him down, you might have two big-time offensive linemen. The trench matchup in that game fascinates me. And then listen to a national podcast, and their big takeaway on last week's game was Baron Morton, the quarterback from Texas Tech. They said they watched the Oregon State film, and they said Beaver defense isn't very good, but he made some big-time NFL throws. So how does he do against a Utah team that's pretty physical? If I could pick one game that I get to watch this week, in fact, if I get to pick one game this whole season, I think so far, this one is in my semifinalists. Like, it's in my top 4 or 5. This is going to be a big-time matchup.
I like Utah. I was not overly impressed with. I was not overly impressed with Texas Tech against Oregon State. I really wasn't, and I wasn't overly impressed with Morton. I thought that was more on Oregon State. I thought sometimes on 3rd and 4th down, I thought they were very sloppy. I don't think his ball placement was necessarily elite. I think there was a lot of meat left on that bone, and I said, if you ask me what was I more impressed with Texas Tech, or was I more underwhelmed by Oregon State? I mean, you look at they had 3 3rd and 20 conversions, including one for a touchdown. That's not going to happen against a better team. 3rd and 26 against Utah, you're not picking up that horse crap screen for that. By the way, that the number 6 Oregon State should have shoved the kid out of bounds at like the 15-yard line. I just wasn't overly impressed, and I have been impressed with Utah. Devin Dampier's got a chance to announce himself on a national stage. Yes. Dude, when Utah has a quarterback, Utah's good. It's always been that way. And this cat's completing 70% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, no pick. He's a threat to run the ball to. They got this Wayshawn Parker who's averaging 7 yards a carry. And I get it. The competition hasn't necessarily been a killer for Utah, UCLA, Cal Poly, and Wyoming. But this is the same thing I can say about Oregon. It's the same thing I can say about Texas Tech. Who the hell have they played? So To me, I've been really impressed with Utah. Remember, Utah was supposed to be the favorite of the Big 12 last year, and then they were riddled by injuries, right? And that's just kind of one of those that, like, hey, what are you going to do when you don't have anybody? But it's an elite O-line. It looks like they have an elite back. And I'm telling you, if you haven't seen this Dampier kid play, keep an eye on him, because it looks like they have a quarterback. So I'm with you. I think this game is exciting, and I'll tell you right now, and even a BYU guy, I'll take the Utes. I think Utah is kind of flying under the radar, and we forget that Kyle Whittingham. I mean, the last 2 years in the Pac-12, who won the Pac-12? Utah. Right. Like, Utah all of a sudden just didn't stop being a good football team. They didn't stop, figuring out how to do this. They just had a year last year that was a funky year that was littered by injuries, and they're not beat up now. And I think they're going to punch Texas Tech in the mouth. I really do. So that's one I'm excited. And by the way, it is at Rice Eccles too. It's not. It's not in Lubbock. So I like this one. And then also too, keep an eye. USC has quietly, they're the number 1 offense in the country. And again, who are you playing? And that Purdue game actually ended up being somewhat kind of competitive there.
It was way closer than it looked at the end.
And so, for USC, now you got Michigan State. And Michigan State, you can say what you will about Michigan State. They're 3-0. That's going to be a well-coached team with Jonathan Smith. And the next 3 weeks, actually the next 4 weeks for USC is at Illinois, Michigan, at Notre Dame, and Nebraska, right? It's go time here for USC. And I want to see Michigan State. This is by far your best challenge, right? You beat up on Missouri State, you beat up on Georgia Southern, Purdue a little closer than I think you'd like to, but the offense is cooking, right? Defense looks pretty good. Had a big turnover to kind of seal away that game and kind of put it away from Purdue. Go out and prove something against Michigan State. Like it's like a perfect schedule for USC. It keeps getting harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. And then the big tests come. I want to see USC put together their most complete game against Michigan State and give me belief. Because what did I say at the start of the year? I said I will take UW and I will take USC to be the 2 better teams than Illinois and Indiana. And so next week, I don't make me look like a fool. So I think there's 2 fun games outside of obviously the rivalry games. I'm with you. The Utah-Texas Tech game, I think has a chance to be a barn burner, but just for me, and it might just be me, I will be keeping my eyes on USC to see if USC is really turned a corner, if this is the same old Lincoln Riley we've seen over the last handful of years.
I think that's all we got this week for previewing college football matchups on the West Coast Biased. Please like, rate, subscribe, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube as well if you really enjoy just watching us.
Yeah.
You might just like our faces. Like our faces. And I think that
the handsome beard.
I think that'll do it for us on this episode. Suke, thanks, man.
All right. See you.